Paul Hogan built an empire out of a single character that turned him into a global legend. But away from the laughter and fame, his personal life was a tangle of sacrifice, regret, and heartbreak. His love story with Linda Kozlowski began with stolen glances on a movie set and blossomed into one of Hollywood's most talked-about romances, yet what seemed like a dream soon turned into a reality that left scars neither of them could erase today. At an age when most men have long made peace with the past, Paul has begun to speak openly about the marriage that both defined him and nearly destroyed him. The beginnings of two worlds colliding. The story starts in 1985 when Paul Hogan was already a household name in Australia. Born in Sydney in 1939, he had risen from working-class obscurity on Sydney Harbour Bridge to becoming a television star with The Paul Hogan Show. His humor, wit, and everyman persona made him a national treasure. By his mid-40s, he was determined to break into Hollywood. That determination gave birth to Crocodile Dundee, a project he co-wrote and starred in, betting everything on its success. On the other side of the world, Linda Kozlowski was chasing her own dreams. Born July 7, 1958 in Fairfield, Connecticut, she had graduated from Juilliard prestigious drama program in 1981 that she paid her dues on stage, performing in productions such as Death of a Salesman, both on Broadway and in its 1985 film adaptation, before fate handed her the role of Sue Charlton, an American journalist sent to cover the life of a rugged crocodile hunter in the Australian outback. For Kozlowski, it was a breakthrough she could only dream of when filming began. Hogan was still married to his first wife, Noeline Edwards, the woman he had wed in 1958 and with whom he had 5 children. Their relationship had endured decades, including a brief separation in the early 1980s before reconciling. But on set of Crocodile Dundee, the chemistry between Paul and Linda spilled far beyond the script. Cast and crew noticed the spark instantly. The lingering looks, the natural rhythm of the banter, and the way they slipped from Mick and Sue into something that felt achingly real. The film premiered in 1986 and became a cultural phenomenon, grossing over $300 million worldwide. Hogan was suddenly an international star, and Linda was catapulted from relative obscurity to global recognition. But behind the scenes, the seeds of scandal had already been planted. Hogan filed for divorce from Noeline in 1986, and by 1990, he and Linda were married. To the world, it was a fairy tale of passion born in their outback. To those who knew them, it was the beginning of a complicated bond that would eventually unravel in ways neither expected. Marriage, fame, and the cracks beneath the surface. When Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski exchanged vows in 1990, many believed they were witnessing the perfect Hollywood love story. Paul was 51, a seasoned performer who had defied the odds to conquer the American box office. Linda was 32, still glowing from the acclaim of a Golden Globe nomination for Crocodile Dundee. Together, they appeared unstoppable, a couple whose on-screen romance had seamlessly transitioned into real life. In those early years, Hogan celebrated his new marriage with grand gestures. He gifted Linda a custom-built mansion, proof of his devotion and the wealth his success had earned him. Their partnership extended onto the screen as well. The pair co-starred in films such as Almost an Angel and Crocodile Dundee 2, reinforcing the image of a glamorous duo. By 1998, their family grew when Linda gave birth to their only child, a son named Chance. Hogan, already nearing 60, poured his energy into fatherhood, while Linda embraced motherhood with the same focus she once reserved for acting. But cracks began to appear almost as soon as the applause died down. Despite his international fame, Paul remained deeply traditional. He wanted stability, a homesick-centered life, and a wife who would prioritize family over career. Linda, by contrast, still longed to explore her potential beyond being Mrs. Hogan. After Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles in 2001, her final film role, she became increasingly frustrated with Hollywood's TYP casting. She spoke candidly about the shallow scripts offered to her, usually relegated to the girlfriend of a comic lead, and admitted they gave her ulcers from the sheer lack of care on set. For Linda, life with Paul soon felt suffocating. Friends later revealed she felt imprisoned, asked how she had lost her identity. Paul, however, believed he was doing what was best for their family. He was never honored to express affection with flowery words that I in his mind. Providing financially and staying committed was enough. Yet Linda's silence grew louder. By the time Chance was old enough for school, the couple's differences, whether about lifestyle, ambitions, or emotional needs, had carved a divide that was impossible to ignore. The breaking point in the 2013 divorce. By the early 2000s, the quiet tensions between Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski had hardened into something irreversible. For more than 2 decades, they had stood side by side as one of Hollywood's most recognizable couples. But the reality behind closed doors told a different story. Linda had given up her acting career, trading scripts and sets for school runs and domestic life. For years, she accepted it, but the longer she lived in Paul's world, the more she felt her own slipping away. In October 2013, Linda made the decision that shocked fans but felt inevitable to those closest to her. She filed for divorce in Los Angeles Superior Court. She cited irreconcilable differences, a phrase that sounded clinical on paper, but concealed years of emotional distance. At the time, she was 56, while Paul was 74. Their son Chance was just 15, old enough to sense the changes in his family, but too young to fully understand the weight of them. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. In July 2014, the split was finalized. The settlement revealed a telling picture of how their lives would diverge. Paul retained full rights to his iconic Crocodile Dundee character and the film company behind it, a reminder that the role which brought them together was still the center of his identity. Linda, meanwhile, walked away with a one-off payment of $6.25 million. There would be no spousal support, no ongoing financial ties. They agreed to share custody of Chance, and Linda was granted the right to remain in their Los Angeles home for 4 years or until she remarried. For Linda, the end of the marriage was less about bitterness and more about reclaiming herself. She told New Idea magazine, "I lived in Paul's shadow for many years, and it's nice to feel me own light right now." Her words carried the exhaustion of someone who had given up her dreams only to find that sacrifice was not enough to sustain happiness. For Paul, the divorce was an undeniable blow, though he insisted it was amicable. He admitted later that the marriage had become worn out, describing the last years as lifeless compared to the bright beginning. Life after divorce, 2 very different paths. When the marriage ended, Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski stepped into starkly different worlds. For Linda, the divorce became a catalyst for reinvention. She had walked away not only from Paul, but also from the shadow of his fame. No longer confined to Hollywood roles that left her uninspired, she chose a quieter, more independent life. Within a year of the split, she began dividing her time between Los Angeles and Morocco, where she met businessman Mulhafi Barber. What started as friendship and collaboration on a tourism venture soon deepened into romance. Together, they launched Dream My Destiny, a Marrakesh-based company offering luxury tours and film location scouting. It was a new chapter, one that reflected her independence and allowed her to build something on her own terms. Linda also proved savvy in real estate. With part of her $6.25 million settlement, she began investing in Venice Beach properties, an area nicknamed Silicon Beach for its appeal to tech entrepreneurs. She acquired multiple homes, rented them out, and earned a reputation as a shrewd property owner. A neighbor later described her as really smart and noted how she had turned her settlement into millions more. Freed from Hollywood and from Paul, she had found her own kind of spotlight, one built not on scripts and cameras, but on smart decisions and personal freedom. Paul's trajectory after the divorce was very different. He stayed in Los Angeles, living in their old Venice Beach home with their son Chance. Though he continued to be revered as an Australian icon, his personal life grew quieter, lonelier. By his 80s, health problems began to erode his once rugged presence. Muscle atrophy and chronic pain left him frail, and his few public appearances showed a man far removed from the charismatic outback hero audiences remembered. He admitted in a rare interview, "I once had it all, fame, fortune, and a wonderful wife, but in the end, I still feel like I lost something most important." While Linda built a life all freedom and love in Morocco, Paul remained tied to the past, haunted by memories of what he had lost. Their paths, once inseparable, now moved in opposite directions, exposing just how different their definitions of happiness had become. Controversies, regrets, and Paul's public confessions. For Paul Hogan, life after Crocodile Dundee was not just marked by fading fame, but by battles that tested his resilience. Beginning in 2003, he was swept into a lengthy investigation by the Australian Taxation Office, accused of funneling millions from his films into offshore accounts known as Operation Wickenby. The probe stretched in for 7 years, casting a heavy shadow over his reputation. At one point in 2010, when Hogan returned home for his mother's funeral, he was hit with a departure prohibition order that barred him from leaving Australia until his alleged tax debt was resolved. The figure cited was staggering, 37.5 million Australian dollars. Hogan maintained his innocence throughout, insisting he had paid his share of taxes. In the end, the charges were dropped in 2010, and by 2012, a confidential settlement was reached. But the years of scrutiny left his career and public image deeply scarred. These controversies, combined with the collapse of his marriage, created a man who seemed increasingly disillusioned. Though he had once been quick-witted and effortlessly charming, his interviews in later years revealed more vulnerability. "I always thought I was doing the right thing," he admitted when reflecting on his relationship with Linda. "But sometimes that's not enough to make someone stay." It was a rare glimpse into the regrets he carried, a cognition that providing materially was never a substitute for emotional closeness. By 2022, Hogan's health had deteriorated further. He spoke candidly about his struggles with muscle wastage and chronic pain, acknowledging that age had caught up with him. Yet the deepest wounds were not physical. In moments of honesty, he confessed that despite his wealth and fame, he felt empty without Linda. Friends observed that he often seemed lost in memories of the past, walking alone along the Venice Beach shoreline where he and Linda once strolled together. The man who had once defined rugged masculinity on screen was now confronting the fragility of real life. Behind the bravado, Paul Hogan was left with the haunting awareness that the love story which defined him was also the one that ended in the loneliest of ways. Reunion on screen and the final years that in an unexpected twist. The story of Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski did not end with divorce papers and separate lives in 2025, more than 2 decades after their last film together. The pair reunited for Crocodile Dundee, the encore cut. The project brought a mastered 4K version of the original film back to cinemas alongside a new behind-the-scenes documentary titled Crocodile Dundee. Lightning in a bottle for fans, it was a nostalgic gift. For Paul and Linda, it was something more, a reminder of the story